Hey guys, Half Click up here. Welcome back to my FZ6R mods and maintenance tutorial series. In today's installation, we will be performing what is more of a transformation really than it is a mod, at least in my opinion. We're going to be retrofitting Yamaha R6 rear sets onto our 2009 FZ6R. Alright, so giving credit where credit's due, I'm actually following in the footsteps of a 600cc.org user by the name of Coco's Random. And some time ago, in fact several years ago, he posted a basic how-to with photos and everything on how to perform this mod. And I heavily referenced his instructions before I am attempting to tackle this. So there you go, Coco's Random on 600cc.org is where this originates from, this idea. And he was successful in pulling it off, and we're going to replicate his process. Also, our second generation R6 rear sets are courtesy of Brian Haygood. Brian is a buddy of mine that is kind of my my track day aficionado. He was nice enough to donate these to our channel and our FZ6R. He should have a YouTube channel by now, and if he does, I will put his username right here with a link to his channel down in the description. But if not, I will include a link to his channel in the description when it becomes available. So I'm going to begin by making a mark here on the factory shift pawl, right where it goes onto the shift shaft. I want a perfect alignment here. That is what I'm going to realign if I want to kind of redo this, go back to factory. So there you go. Alright, so we'll begin by removing the pawl from the shaft. That way we can remove all of the assembly as one unit. The fairing's in the way of using our little socket set, so we're going to have to use a traditional Allen key. It's a 5mm. You can imagine how tight that was on there. Has not been removed since 2009. Alright, so next we have three 6mm bolts that are holding this entire rear set assembly on. So technically we should be able to just remove these three bolts, whole thing comes off. That was actually way too easy. So there you go, man. Alright, so now we can mock up our R6 rear set. And just for clarification, I have the adjustment as tight as it can go, pretty much. This guy is longer than the FZ6R shift linkage. So it's going to be an adaptation of sorts. We will have to, it'll just kind of be trial and error, right? Because you got to be able to upshift, right? So this is just going to be trial and error, guys. Let's just get it mounted, kind of mocked up, and see what it looks like. Alright, so just kind of spitballing it here. Hopefully this works out. Probably need about that much. You know, it's hard to tell. Alright, I made some adjustments off camera just because it took a lot of trial and error, right? I didn't want to waste you guys' time, so fast forward to now, and I think this angle is going to work out. See here, looks like we'll be able to click up, and the angle's not too drastic to where we should be able to click down just fine. Moves pretty dang good. Not sure about the up click yet. There's not very much room there, not very much clearance. We may have to make this angle a little bit more acute than it is now, but what do you say we hop on the bike and just see if I can get through the gears at all? Give it a shot. Well, there's first. There's neutral. There's second. First, neutral, second. Wow. Dude, this doesn't feel bad at all. Dang, man. I think this is going to be legit, boys and girls. I tell you something that's cool and coincidental is the factory go back to mark that we made is actually perfectly in line with the gap here on the shift pawl. So that's handy dandy for when we go to put this one back on. I also just took a picture of it up close just to make sure I can get it on the exact same spline orientation as it is right now when we go back together. So we want to remove the shift linkage here so that we can move the shift lever out of the way, make a mark for where we're going to tap this guy. Right, so we're utilizing the factory top bolt hole, but we've got to drill and tap the bottom hole. I've already verified that there's enough meat there for the bolt to go through safely and accommodate a nut on the backside. So we can move it out of the way like this. Make our mark precisely where we want to drill. And there it is. Alright, so here's the methodology for this drill and tapping operation. Disclaimer, I've never tapped anything before, so this will be a first for me. Whether or not it's successful really has no bearing as to whether or not we can secure the rear set properly. If the tapping operation doesn't prove successful, it doesn't matter. We'll blue Loctite the nut on the back of the bolt and, you know, call it done. But we're going to try. We're going to try and do it correctly. So it's an M8 bolt. Brian says a 17/64 drill bit will mate nicely with the M8 tap. So we are going to step up slowly. Got a little bit of oil here for the heat, and we're going to start out small, and we're just going to step up this hole until we eventually run a 17/64 through it, and then we're going to get the crescent wrench and try to gently tap it by hand. So, as I understand it, the idea is you want to be able to do this by hand because a drill is a little bit too rough, so to speak. So you want to be able to feel it and gently tap this by hand. Fast forward quite some time, and we've discovered we have to graduate to a larger wrench. So that Milwaukee vice grip just was not strong enough, and it was actually spreading open. Alright folks, so with our holes successfully tapped, we're now ready to permanently mount our R6 rear set. Don't forget your blue Loctite. Now for the bottom, we've tapped and threaded, and we're going to utilize a nylon lock washer. Or I'm sorry, a nylon lock nut. So when you consider the R6 factory hardware, we want to be able to have enough threads for this nut to thread past the nylon lock portion, and so we're going to utilize the factory bolt from the FZ6R, which is actually longer. And that should give us the extra thread to be able to utilize that nut. And our nut on the back. Plenty of thread to utilize. Matter of fact, let me get that shot for you guys. There you go. More than enough thread. That'll be good to go. And no, that's not conflicting with the chain. That's a illusion from the angle. And actually a 13 millimeter will fit on that M8 just good enough. And that's not going anywhere. And coming up top with our shifter pawl, our alignment was right exactly with our factory mark. Just like that. And this guy's a 10. There we go. Guys, our shifter side R6 rear set is complete. Outstanding. Now looking at the remaining factory holes, we can just use the factory bolts as placeholders, kind of just aesthetic pieces. There, much better. And real quick, just to give you an idea of the height difference. R6 rear set, factory peg. Pretty significant. Right, so moving on to the right side of the motorcycle. What are we going to do? Well, we have a brake system to contend with. We are going to utilize the R6 master cylinder. We will not be using the factory master cylinder. So we've got to crack this line. We'll be removing this line, replacing the banjo bolt gaskets with new ones from Yamaha. We'll be placing this line onto the R6 master cylinder. We also have connected to the rear set the brake light plunger, which of course has an electrical connector, which on the factory setup feeds up into underneath here where the reservoir tank is, and we don't know exactly where that is, so we're gonna have to pop this cover off to find it, and we'll go from there. And so you pop this cover off with a 5mm. There's also a push pin down here. Looks like I'll also have to pop off the seat here because the electrical connector runs up underneath, dang near underneath the tank, so might have to lift the tank as well. We'll see. Okay, so we've hit two major snags. Here's where the brake switch connector goes in. See, I've already disconnected it. Here's what we're dealing with. The connector types are different. The brown one is from the R6. The white one, of course, is on the Fizzer. Now, this may be as simple as snipping and using butt connectors to swap the connector types over, because they're both simple 2-wire. So that's a thing. Other option would be perhaps to swap the entire switch over. I don't know if that is possible. We won't know until we take it apart and examine the stock switch further. Other thing I noticed is that the reservoir tube, the feed line, is thicker than the R6 feed line. Right, so again, we won't know anything until we get the factory rear set off, so we can investigate these brake switches closer. So just like the other side, you've got 3 bolts. They're all 6mm. Oh, and one more thing, the master cylinder is held on by 2 little 5mm bolts. Got to get these off so the rear set can separate from the master cylinder, which will hang behind. All right, a little bit more real-time discovery. The brake lever is connected to the master cylinder, so that is going to have to come off as well. All right, we are learning as we go. That guy's a 5mm. Now then, so until we figure all that out, I'm gonna go ahead and just remove the entire brake system from the bike so I can have it in hand and out of the way. This little guy here, this bracket that holds the brake line in place, is a 8mm socket, and then the reservoir is a 10mm bolt. So upon closer examination, it would appear as though the reservoir tube, the feed tube, appears thinner than the Fizzer tube. However, the inside diameters are identical. It's the outside diameter that is different. So I'm going to go ahead and attempt to swap over reservoirs. And there we go. Voila! Alright, so now we're gonna swap the actual brake lines. The R6 has a 6mm hex banjo bolt. And get our banjo bolt gaskets, these little copper gaskets. Get these guys ready. There's your Yamaha part number. Got 2 of them. The Spiegler line is a 14mm socket. And here you see our Spiegler line, and our factory reservoir has been swapped over to the R6 master cylinder. That's ready to mount. Alright, so here's a fascinating operation. The brake switches are identical. Alright, now we've already established that the connector type is different. But instead of snipping connectors, if we can, now that's always an option, obviously. That's the ultimate option. But if we can simply swap the springs, right? Because the only difference here is that we need the longer spring. Let's see, there. We need this longer spring from the R6 switch. And if we could attach that longer spring to the FZ6R switch, then we don't have to snip the connector, and we're still utilizing the factory one. Now the trick, okay, I've already started this off camera, as you can see. The trick here, you see this dental floss. The little guy wants to suck back in. Let's see if I can pull it out and show you. See there? That is what the spring goes through. But when you take the spring out and let go, it wants to suck back into the switch mechanism. So this dental floss, as far as I can tell, is the only thing that is preventing that from happening. I don't know that for a fact, but it's like a safety net, right? So I'm going to replicate this operation on this switch, and we'll see if we can't get the spring swapped over. Then we don't have to snip connectors. Easier said than done. It's it's part of the spring by itself. Let's just start by getting the dental floss through there. All right. There's our safety net. All right. There it is. Golly. Okay. Again, with the objective being that we get this guy into this guy. Got it. Yes. Pull our safety net out of there. And there it is. Swapped. Awesome. See there? Now we'll just pop this booger out of here. Right. I'm sure a small pound test fishing line would have worked as well, but there you go, man. So we will remove the R6 switch from the R6 bracketry. Like so. We will insert the FZ6R switch into the R6 bracketry, and just like that, we are set. Operational brake switch. Beautiful. Guys, sometimes you gotta be resourceful, right? There, we don't have to snip that. It'll plug right into the factory connector. Alright, and so now that we've got the sketchy stuff out of the way, right? Our R6 master cylinder is all hooked up. So rear brake line is ready. We'll have to bleed it, but I'm worried about that later. What else? We have our switch fully modified, ready for installation. I tested it last night and it does work. She lights up like she's supposed to. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and mock up our right side rear set and get to drilling and tapping. Alright, so we've got her sort of snug, just enough to swivel it around. Guess it'll be right about there compared to what it looks like on the other plate on the other side. You know, you want to have it Of course, the proper way to do it is measure it, but I mean, you can really just eyeball this, because what I'm looking at is the level relative to the swing arm, as well as how much meat is available for a nut and bolt to properly go through here. Right? We can go ahead and see what this brake is going to look like mocked up. It will be something like that. Beautiful. Got to pull this little cotter pin out. This guy will thread through there, and it'll ride like that. Looks like we'll be able to utilize our factory, yep, right there. See there? Our factory keeper for our brake line. That'll be awesome. It'll look factory, man. Sweet. Here, get you a better shot at this. Right? Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get on the bike, make sure this feels about at the right height, which is probably pretty dang close, and we'll get to making a mark down here. And I tell you what, I had an idea to measure ground to peg on the left side, and it was 17.5 inches, give or take. So duplicating that here, looks like that's about perfect. 17.5, give or take. That's about right. So yep, that's our tap and drill spot right there. Alright, now it's ready for an M8 tap. All right, we are tapped, guys. Look at that. Beautiful. All right, and we can test our M8 bolt. Like butter. Very nice. All right, we are drilled and tapped. Sort of starting to run out of daylight, so I've got some light shining down here. Hopefully it looks okay. I'm gonna mock up our rear set. Again, using a factory Fizzer bolt because they're longer. It'll allow for better nut engagement. And that is just perfect. There's our positioning, folks. A little bit of blue Loctite, torque her down real well, rock and roll. Our M8 1.25 pitch nut, and again, that's a nylock nut. We want as much security as possible. Remember, it's like a 13 millimeter. Pretty close. Alright, that ain't going nowhere. Alright, remember our brake light switch routes up through here above the rear shock mount. And we're just going to clip her right back in. Factory to factory, man. Click. Can't get any better than that. Quick function check. Factory switch swap is successful. Alright, so moving on to our final steps, man. We've got the right-hand rear set installed. We are ready to install our master cylinder for the braking system. It mounts. I had to source these bolts from Home Depot. I opted for a hex head. I plan to order the Yamaha bolts soon, but for purposes of time constraints, etc., etc., I went ahead and picked these up just so that we can get the assembly together. Now these are an M6 with a 1.0 thread pitch. I also picked up some washers to sort of fill that gap that's on the master cylinder here. Another thing we have to do is prepare the brake actuator down here. It's a pin held in there with a little cotter pin, which has already been straightened to remove. There we go. Pop this guy out. Get everything centered up like so. Now this rear linkage is adjustable, and it looks like we're gonna have to come out a little bit in order for the holes to line up. Maybe one more turn. give it a shot. Our bolts should line up. Right, that's pretty much in place. There we go. We've got master cylinder compression. All right, let's button it up. Perfect. Nice and centered. Just give her a little cinch. There we go. Go ahead and bring this lock nut, or this set nut, down here. That's a 12 millimeter. Don't need to go crazy on this one because it's held in with a pin, right? Grab a new cotter pin. Got this little guy that is way too long, but it will achieve the desired result. Just like that. Fold these guys over. And that R6 master cylinder, my friends, is installed. Kind of scooting over to the left just a little bit and looking at our little brake line bracket. I think we can incorporate it just like factory. Well, I say factory, obviously this is an aftermarket steel braided line. This one in particular is the brand Spiegler, but you get what I'm you guys get what I'm talking about. Came with this little bushing to kind of provide a sort of factory style finish. Now, admittedly, I would kind of prefer a little bit more slack in this line, but I'd rather have it cinched a little tight than have it just kind of floating out there. So, you can see there. We'll monitor that closely. And if for some reason that leaks, we'll probably order a blue line made for an R6. That way we know we're getting the required length. Probably have to double check that, but either way. Alright, man. Wow. Guys, it has been a journey, let me tell you. What you don't know is that this tutorial actually went on, or I'm sorry, this installation actually went on for the past week. Various little nuances here and there. You guys saw the brake switch hiccup that we successfully overcame. I had to figure out these bolt sizes because it didn't come with the set. Just little things like that, you know. All that's left to do now is to bleed the brakes, which really doesn't have a place in this tutorial, right? Because it's been all about the R6 rear sets conversion. But let's just kind of take a step back and have a look-see at our finished product. That is awesome. Well, there you have it, guys. Sort of my denouement so far of FZ6R mods and maintenance tutorials, right? I wouldn't exactly say that the R6 rear set swap is difficult, but it's not easy either. There's a lot to pay attention to. But it came out so well and looks so dang good that I gotta say I'm pretty impressed and happy with it. I'm looking forward to the performance potential, the new capabilities that the bike will have on the track. I can't wait to test ride it, right? That'll be another video coming up soon enough. Be sure and tune in for the test ride with this R6 rear set conversion on our FZ6R. And along those lines, if you are not yet subscribed, you really should be. Be sure and click the like button if you enjoy this kind of tutorial content. I know these kinds are kind of long and drawn out, but they're very detailed, and I try and keep it that way. Oh, and also if you have any questions, be sure and drop them down in the comment section below. I will answer them to the best of my ability if you are trying to take on this project yourself. But as always, this has been me, that's been you, that's been Evelyn. It's Half Click Up, guys. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace and goodbye.